In this episode of PulsePoint, we'll update you on these topics. Family First warns about the real agenda behind the Pink Shirt Day, which is coming up next week. Oranga Tamariki has indicated that it's ready to knock on family doors if parents refuse to let their children change gender. A new policy guide for schools have just been released to help children dealing with gender identity distress. The coalition government recently announced the return of the 3 strikes legislation, but with some changes. And finally, younger people are banning their smartphones in favor of a dumb phone. Welcome to PulsePoint, the latest media stories and research related to family and society that you need to know about, from both New Zealand and overseas. Let's cut through the spin and uncover the real issues. I'm Tampi Stowers. Pink Shirt Day is coming up at the end of next week, but many parents are not aware that, while well-intentioned, Pink Shirt Day is being used by activists to politicize gender theory and sexual identity of school children under the guise of anti-bullying programs. On the page talking about types of bullying, there is primarily one focus: homophobic, biphobic, and or transphobic bullying. All refers to bullying based on a person's sexual orientation or gender identity. In Aotearoa, rangatahi who identifies as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, takatapui, or other sexuality and gender diverse communities, also referred to as the rainbow community, experience higher rates of bullying. Unfortunately, overweight students with acne or speech impediment or a physical disability, or who are struggling academically, or students from a different culture don't have a lobby group or cross-sex party parliamentary network. Yet depression and suicide are also associated with these type of bullying. Schools and students and parents want the focus to be on all students who are bullied. The main sponsor of Pink Shirt Day is the Mental Health Foundation, who are also doing a campaign to retain the radical RSE program in schools. But remember, the Mental Health Foundation said recently on TVNZ that they aren't too keen on parents' rights.
Yeah, I think parents are always part of this process, but we need to flip it around. This is actually children's and young people's rights. It's not the parent's right to decide whether a young person should be equipped for life. It is the young person's right to be equipped for life, and as a nation, that's what we should be doing.
And what happens to all the funding? Pink Shirt Day will fund Inside Out to run rainbow, inclusive workshops in schools and around Aotearoa. That's gender fluidity and radical sexuality ideology via the RSE curriculum. Supporting Pink Shirt Day, no matter how you do it or what narrative you may present in your school, is still supporting a radical sexuality and gender ideology being pushed towards your children and grandchildren. You can now read and watch more analysis about Pink Shirt Day on a recent issue of MacBlog, which you can find on our website familyfirst.nz. A recent report from the Centrist News Service says Oranga Tamariki has just signalled it's ready to knock on family doors if they refuse to let their children change gender. A response to an Official Information Act, OIA, by the centrist says gender identity is crucial in the development of a young individual, as it is a big part of their personal and social identity. We encourage our kaimahi to be guided by rangatahi when determining how best to engage with whānau or family or caregivers regarding their views about gender identity or sexuality of their tamaiti or rangatahi, and the supports they may need to fully accept and affirm their identity. It also says there may be times where a situation involving a rangatahi or a young person who is actively considering or is in the process of transitioning is facing resistance from whānau that may be having an impact on their safety and well-being. So, according to Oranga Tamariki, the resistance to protect a child from confusion, chemicalization, and castration is a problem. It's pretty clear from the documentation that Oranga Tamariki will push a gender fluidity message, and if children don't get their way, Oranga Tamariki, Rainbow Youth, and Inside Out will be there to practice conversion therapy on the child and help them get over the line to chemicalization, castration, and confusion. The state agency, which is supposed to act in the best interests of vulnerable children, is focused on making them more vulnerable by dragging them into gender confusion and add to their trauma by separating them from their family and whānau, who in most cases will have the best interests of the child at heart. The Ethos Alliance, a new advocacy and law firm, recently released a policy guide offering a watchful waiting approach to caring for children dealing with gendered identity distress. Central to the guide is how schools should respond when a student requests a social transition like the use of preferred pronouns. The guide is geared towards helping school leaders, school boards, state-integrated school proprietors, and parents navigate the laws and guidelines, like the RSC guidelines around when a child wants to undergo social transition. In an interview on MacBlog, here's what CEO Alex Pank said.
Really, the key point here is that watchful waiting, because it's about letting a child take time to develop and to naturally explore these kinds of questions. It's not about trying to change gender identity. It's not about trying to suppress gender identity. That kind of cautious and exploratory approach is not only becoming best practice in more countries like Sweden, Finland, England. That's not a conversion practice as defined by the law. If you want the detail on that, it's all on the guide, along with quite a lot of other legal analysis.
You can read this resource on their website, ethosalliance.nz. The coalition government recently announced the return of the three strikes legislation, but with some changes. The new three strikes regime will only apply to prison sentences over 24 months. Individuals convicted of murder while on their third or second strike will face appropriately lengthy non-parole periods. There will be limited benefits of guilty pleas, and the use of manifestly unjust exception will be extended to avoid very harsh outcomes and address exceptional cases. The same 40 serious violent and sexual offences under the former three strikes legislation will remain, with the addition of the new strangulation and suffocation offence. We've released some independent polling last year that shows that only 16% opposed the three strikes law. The green section represents support. 2 out of 3 Kiwis, that is 65%, and you will notice that Labour supporters and even 41% of Green voters support it. A key reason for the three strikes being initially introduced and receiving public support was widespread community outrage and serious violent or sexual offenders repeatedly getting parole and going on to commit more serious crimes. Reintroducing the three strikes law will protect families and communities from worsening levels of family harm, violent crimes, and gun violence. And finally, the boring phone is a new featureless flip phone that is feeding the growing appetites of younger people who want to bin their smartphones in favor of a dumb phone. Now, the boring phone is part of a new trend built on the suspicion of Gen Z towards the data and attention harvesting technologies they have grown up with. That suspicion has fueled reinventions of retro mobile phones. 9 out of 10 phones are smartphones, and dumb phones remain niche. Now, Joe Birch, a technology analyst, comments, however, there is evidence of this generation modifying their smartphone behavior with concerns around the negative impacts of being constantly digitally connected driving this. 3 in 5 Gen Zers say they'd like to be less connected to the digital world, for instance. Now, a new book by Jonathan Haidt called The Anxious Generation: How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness highlights the research around the effect of children changing from play-based childhoods to phone-based childhoods and the results on children's social and neurological development. The author will be interviewed as part of Family First's upcoming conference in July. Go to forumonthefamily.nz. And that's the latest episode of PulsePoint. You can check out all these stories and more on our website, familyfirst.nz. We'll keep watching the news so that you don't have to. See you next time.